Welcome to the SEGA Lounge, where we celebrate our love for all things SEGA, including the games, the music, and the community. I'm your host, KC. Join me as I talk to different guests and learn more about their projects and passion for SEGA. Hello and welcome to the SEGA Lounge. This is episode 237. My name's Kissy, and this is a very special episode. We're here to celebrate this little guy. Yeah, it's the Dreamcast, and the better one, right? The proper true swirl, the like this blue swirl master race. I'm starting in a controversial manner already. Anyway, it's the 25th anniversary of the Dreamcast in Europe, and I thought, and I'm saying this as a person who has done this in the past. Most people usually focus on the American launch of the system, 9999, right? It's easier. It's got a nice little ring to it. But I'm based in Europe, and I have a lot of friends who are also based in Europe. And this year, I decided to focus more on the European side of things, since it's the big 25th anniversary. So I've invited a couple of, or three friends to join me to talk about the Dreamcast and their experiences with the launch and beyond. Before we get into that, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can support the show by going to thesegalounge.com/support. So if you want to just like buy us a coffee, buy some cool merch, right? Cool SEGA Lounge branded merch to celebrate the 10th anniversary, feel free to. Either way, we love you. Thank you very much for listening and or watching the episode. So let's get into the celebrations. And joining me, we have a panel of illustrious guests. From my left to my right, we have Lewis Cox. Hello, Lewis, of the Dreamcast Junkyard. Hi.
Hello, happy to be back. I don't actually know how many times I've been on. Yeah. I don't know how many times I've been on at this point. Yeah,
not enough.
But I'm happy to be back. And I just wanted to say your Dreamcast seems to have survived, the test of time better than mine, which I actually have to hand. Yeah. I don't know if you can actually see it best there. You see the difference in color. That's wonderful, isn't it?
The modem looks really nice, though.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, welcome, Lewis. Thank you for joining us. Always nice to have you here, and always nice to have our next guest, Andrew Dickinson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. It's been a while as well. I think I can't remember the last time I was on, but it's good to be back again. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. How is your Dreamcast holding up?
It's okay. I've got three, so I'm sure one of them is fine. But I haven't looked. I haven't brought mine with me, unlike you two. So, yeah.
Okay. I actually unplugged mine and gave it a nice little swipe of a rag over the top, just so it looked a little bit better and not as dusty as it usually is. But I love this thing.
Fair.
Yeah. Okay. And joining us for the first time from Spain and from Sonic Paradise, a well-known Sonic website, Ash the Dragon. Hello, Ash.
Hi. I am very happy to be here with you all. I have to say, my English is not that good, but I will try to to do the best I can.
It's great. It's great. We can understand you perfectly, and we're really happy to have you here to share a little bit more about something that maybe we don't talk about that often, which is like what happened in countries other than the UK when we talk about the European launch and beyond, right? But the life of the Dreamcast. So we have two representatives of other countries, including myself, to talk a little bit more about that. Really excited to share some info on that. So, Will, as people know, listeners of the show know, structure is not one of my strong suits. However, I usually start the show with a little an outline that I put together and that I shared with you guys. So let's start with that, and then we'll go from there and see if we can throw this out the window at some point and focus on other things. But this will try to be a little bit more like lighthearted about this, sharing more of like our own experiences above all. There are some very cool pieces of content being shared these days. We're actually recording this on the actual date on the 14th of October 2014. So to this day that we're recording this, the Dreamcast is 25 years old in Europe. And people, content creators across the interwebs have been releasing some interesting videos and podcasts. Check out the Dreamcast Junkyard's episode. Really nice listen. Really enjoyed. And thanks for the shout out, guys, by the way. Also, the Sega guys have put out a couple of videos as well, I think, about that, the launch of the Dreamcast in Europe. So those are probably more comprehensive, like history-focused pieces of content. We're going to go with a little more like a fun outlook on things. We'll see. We'll see. Also, before we get into this, I have to say I hate you guys for agreeing to come here on this day, because throughout the day, I started to feel the need to play my Dreamcast tonight. But because we're recording this, I can't. So you could have said
You're
no.
welcome.
Okay, let's start with a little brief intro about each of us and where we were when the Dreamcast launched. So 25 years ago. Let's try to go back into the headspace of whatever age you were at that time and see if we can remember. For example, let's start with you, Andrew. Where were you? Were you aware of the Dreamcast launching that day? Were you a Sega fan before that?
So I think I was aware of it, but only in the back of my mind, because I wasn't really a Sega fan at that point. I had my PlayStation, and I was totally happy with my PlayStation at the time. I had no reason to get a Dreamcast. So on the actual launch day 25 years ago, I'd have been at school. I was 15. Was I 15? Might have been. No, I was 15. I was definitely 15. When you get as old as we are,
I think you were,
Casey,
because we're the same age, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say, yeah, when you get to our age, you just forget. Time is nothing anymore. But yeah, so I was 15 and happily playing my PlayStation. I can't remember what games there were around that time. I know that not long after the launch of the Dreamcast, there was Resident Evil 3 and Final Fantasy 8 and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I was doing. It wasn't until the following year that I actually got one. But I do remember like all of the stuff in the magazines at the time, like Games Master and CBG and stuff like that were talking about the Dreamcast and how awesome it was going to be. And I was like, cool, okay. But I paid very little attention beyond that, unfortunately, at the time. So...
Okay. Were you a Sega fan before that?
So no, before the PlayStation, I was Nintendo. We had a NES and a SNES. I once borrowed my stepsister's Mega Drive, and I think we played it for a week because we swapped basically. We had a SNES, she had a Mega Drive, so we swapped for a week. And Sonic good fun, but then after the week, I was happy to have Mario back. So it's all good.
Traitor. And by the way, I introduced everyone's projects, but I didn't mention, for example, one of your many projects. You're also part of the Junkyard, but also the Dreamcast years.
We're matching today. Look at that.
There we go.
Both
There we
got the
go.
same props.
Yeah.
I wrote it, and I don't even have that in my office with me. How bad is that?
That's called being modest. Like, you're not like, oh, look at the book that I wrote. That's not really that.
The only thing I have even close. Hang on, I'm just going to dip out of frame. For some reason, I have these next to me, but like I have art prints of the book I haven't even released yet. So.
Oh my god, that's nice.
That is an awesome to be cover.
Yeah, that looks really nice. Looks really nice. Yeah. And I brought this up because this is a very good. So Dreamcast Year 1 is a very good place to research some of the stuff that we're talking about today, including like launch games and stuff. So thank you, Andrew, for this as well. Okay, moving on. So Ash, where were you 25 years ago?
Well, I was a bit. I'm going to be the black sheep because I was a Sega but I say I'm not the only one. Back then, I was a Pokemon freak, so I was full on Nintendo consoles and Nintendo games, especially Game Boy and Pokemon. So I wasn't very aware about Dreamcast back then. But by bits and there, I saw get the games and the console and said that's good. I like that. Sadly, I never got a Dreamcast back at that time, but I got sort of a Dreamcast a bit later because I got a GameCube, and I only have Sega games, so it's like I had a Dreamcast, but in a cube form.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So you only had Sega games for the GameCube?
Yes, when the first time, yes. I had later on, I have more Nintendo games, but the games I bought the GameCube with was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Crazy Taxi. So it was a
Nice.
Dreamcast.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Was Sega big in Spain by that time?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Not at that time, but Sega was very big back in the Mega Drive and Master System time. Back when with the Dreamcast, it was lower because there was a big backlash with the Saturn, but
Mhm.
People still cared about Sega.
Okay. They're coming for us now. They're coming for
Yeah.
us. Where we have
That's
to
what
run.
on my YouTube channel we call it the Retro Police.
Okay.
Whenever we say something a bit weird, Retro Police comes out.
This is Woodrow City. We're in the streets of rage tonight. So thank you, Ash, for sharing. Lewis, what about you? Tell us your tale of not being a Sega fan.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. I've similar to Ash actually. Pokemon was like all the rage amongst people of my age group. I think I've said before I think I was 7 when the Dreamcast released in Europe. And yeah, but I've explained before on the Sega Lounge that I used to watch my granddad play games, and he was big on the PS1 games like Tomb Raider. And I loved watching him play those. And then also around my friends' houses, everyone had a PlayStation. I remember like loving Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and Time Crisis, and the only real Sega console I'd played was my granddad did have a Saturn, but I don't ever remember watching him play it. But me and my cousin played Virtual Cop 2 on that, and that was amazing because I had already been exposed to Time Crisis, and I love light gun stuff, and I was like, wow, we're playing this together. We both had light guns, so that was pretty awesome. And the other Sega thing I was exposed to, because I don't remember the Mega Drive at all from when I was that age, but I used to love the show Sonic Underground on the TV, and I used to like always sing the theme song because it was radical. So that was my kind of exposure to Sega, and then the next thing was the Dreamcast. So yeah.
Do you want to grace us with a little bit of that theme song?
I don't actually know the lyrics. All I know is Sonic Underground, and I can't remember the rest. That's it.
That's basically it. That's basically it. Yeah.
And there was like a green hedgehog or something called Axel. Was that the show? Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched it.
There were 3. So it's Sonic and his siblings, right? Sonia.
Yeah.
Manic, was it? Manic,
yeah, that sounds
I think
right.
so, yeah, the green one. Yeah, I think so. It's been a while as well. Yeah, been a while. Okay. So we've pretty much established none of us are Sega fans. No, I'm kidding. We all are, but I was actually a Sega fan before the Dreamcast, and I'm going to share this one more time, once again. So for people who have been listening to this to the Sega Lounge since forever, they already know. But I was a big Sega fan growing up. Started with the Mega Drive. Sonic was the thing, right? But then I skipped the Saturn, and not just the Saturn, but the whole generation. So I didn't have any consoles during that generation. But by 1998, perhaps. So I always kept in touch with what was happening in the world of video games through TV shows that we had here in Portugal that showed what was happening with the Saturn as well. video game magazines as well. I bought some of those, and I always kept an eye on what was happening. And when I realized the Dreamcast was coming in 1999, I knew I had to get back on on the Sega train, and I thought the way that it was, I don't know if it's how it was promoted over here. I don't think so. But in my mind, in my head, I thought, oh, this is it. This is the comeback. This is the big comeback for Sega. This is gonna be it. The 128-bit generation will be it for Sega. Let's go. And so I was actually working, not working. I was doing like a professional course here, which had I had like a scholarship, and I saved my money, like most of that monthly allowance that I got, saved most of it so I could buy a Dreamcast. Not at launch, sadly, because I didn't have the money yet, but a few months after. So, and it was the first console that I bought with my own money, which is something that I'm still very proud of, and it has a special place in my heart because of that. And so I was pretty much into the Sega of it all, although it was mostly promoted as Dreamcast only, right? But for me, it was always the Sega Dreamcast. It was like part of my childhood and part of the legacy that I grew up with. So that my story is a little bit different, right? So going back to you guys, when did you guys get your Dreamcast? So Andrew, back to you.
When did I get my Dreamcast? It was the next year, so it was my 16th birthday. And this is probably a story, again, if people listen, because I think I told it on an episode that I was on with you, Casey. So if you've already heard me speak about this, you're going to hear me say it again. But I feel like I've repeated this story about a million times at this point. But I wanted a Dreamcast because Resident Evil Code Veronica was announced to be coming to it, and I was a huge Resident Evil fan. Had been for a couple of years by that point. It was crazy into it. So I was like, well, if it's exclusive for the Dreamcast, then obviously I have to have a Dreamcast because that's the only way I'm going to play it. So I essentially begged my mum to get me one for my 16th birthday. And we went, I think it was 2 or 3 months early, to like a secondhand game store in our town. Because obviously by that point it was nearly a year old. My birthday was in August, and we went maybe in April, May time to go get it for some reason. I don't know why. So it was kind of like 6 months, 7 months old by that point. And so I basically went into this store with my mum and picked up a secondhand Dreamcast, along with I got Crazy Taxi and Power Stone. They were like, oh, if you're buying a secondhand one, we'll give you 2 games with it. And I was like, oh, great. Took it home, and it stayed in my mum's wardrobe for about a day, and then I basically said, can I take it out and test to make sure it works, because it's secondhand, right? You have to check these things to make sure they work.
That's smart. That's really smart.
Exactly. Yeah. So I ended up getting like an hour or so playing Power Taxi, and actually within that time I fell in love with it. I'd never played games like those before, and I was like, this is incredible. So before my actual birthday, I think I managed to persuade my mum to let me get it out several times, giving different excuses every time as to why I needed to play it. Once my friend was over, and I was like, well, I need to test if both controllers work, so I need to like play Power Stone. And so my friend managed to play it before my birthday. Anyway, yeah, so I got it on my 16th birthday, but technically I played it like a couple of months before that. And yeah, and I also made her get it out when the Code Veronica demo came out on the official Dreamcast magazine, on the disc, and I was like, I need to play this demo. So yeah, she let me play that as well. So
see if it works.
Yeah, exactly. A walkover back then. I think she's a bit wise.
Awesome. Okay, what about you, Ash? When did you get your first Dreamcast?
My first Dreamcast, I got it pretty late because I had a GameCube, but I got it around 2006 or so when I started retro collecting. I started to look about games from the past. I was a very big fan of Sonic back then, thanks to playing Sonic Adventure 2 of Dreamcast. And I also had Sega hardware from before because my first console was a Master System. So I already knew of Sonic and Sega. So then I decided to look at the things I have missed as the past, out the Sega past, and got a Mega Drive, and got a Dreamcast and a Saturn. So I started to look more into the Sega history of games back then. So it was late, but I got to play the games around the time. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Lewis, what about you?
I played the Dreamcast first at a friend's house, like a family friend. It was these two brothers that I was like great friends with, and they had the Dreamcast, and I went over, and we were playing a lot of like multiplayer games on there. Power Stone and Quake 3 Arena were like the highlights, and yeah, it was a blast. I remember absolutely loving any time I could go around there and to play it. And I had like sleepovers, and we just played it all night, and it was amazing. Power Stone 2 specifically was the game that they had they got that, and that was like amazing. I know it's like a controversial opinion to like that one as much as the first, but the fact that you could play with more people was like the thing for me. The fact you can play with 4 people, and so there it is, yeah. And so after that, I moved away, unfortunately. So there was, and I don't know. I guess maybe I thought that like I'd get to play it again, but no one I knew had one. They all had PS2s because that was the thing, wasn't it? And I mentioned previously on Sega Lounge that like my mum didn't really want me to get game consoles because she wanted me to focus on school and stuff, and probably thought they'd like rot my
parenting.
brain. Yeah, well, exactly. She probably thought they'd like rot my brain or whatever. And so I never actually got one around the time it was contemporary, which wasn't that long. I've come to realize, and I actually, this is one thing I remembered actually the other day was I feel like I remember we were like she was driving somewhere and she'd like hear things on the radio and tell me about it. Like I remember she was saying, "Oh, I heard that the Game Boy Color's being discontinued, and now there's going to be the Game Boy Advance." And I was like, "Oh, cool." But then I swear there was one time where she went, "Oh, I've heard the Sega Dreamcast has been discontinued." And at the time, I thought, "What? Like this is the coolest console ever! Like all them games I play with my friends. How did this fail? This is awesome." And so, yeah, I vividly remember her telling me that, and so, yeah. And then later on, I think it's like sort of early 2010s, I was at college. I had my first job, and I just was rediscovering games. And so I bought a Dreamcast, and then I was able to I reintroduced myself to it, and then introduced all my friends to all these games. And so we were playing all the games, and I kind of got a reputation. It's like, oh, if you go around Lewis's, he's going to make you play Power Stone 2. It was sort of, but they all loved it. Like those guys were obsessed with it as I was, and they all had like the characters they'd play as, and yeah, so it was good fun.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. I as I said before, I was really hyped for the console. I sadly couldn't get one at launch. But I said this before, I got a game before I got the console. I bought Sonic Adventure, which sat on my desk for a few months, so I could feel like a failure. I had the game, but I couldn't play it. It was really, really, really upsetting, to be honest. But because I remember going to, I can't really remember exactly which place I got it from. And the game and the console, I can't really remember exactly where. It was probably at like one of the local shopping malls. But I remember going there frequently because I was I was doing an internship, and then afterward, I usually passed the shopping mall I went in, and I went to one of the game shop stores, and I looked at the Dreamcast and like, oh my god! Now I want to play Sonic Adventure because I'm such a big Sonic fan, and this looks awesome. And I remember on TV and everywhere, the big thing about Sonic Adventure was the whale chase scene, right, in Emerald Coast. And oh my god, there were like kiosks, and I tried to play the game a little bit. And so I ended up getting the game before getting the console, which was an interesting move. Not sure if smart or not, but I read that manual like over and over again. I even bought, and this one's for you, Ash, because I bought, I don't know if it was like the official Dreamcast magazine or something unofficial, but it was like a Dreamcast themed magazine in Spanish that wound up somewhere in a newsstand in Lisbon. And I got one of those that was like dedicated to Sonic Adventure, and it came with like a guide with each story. And so I tried not to spoil myself in terms of story, but I remember reading little bits of each of the 6 characters' stories and the levels, and looking at that and like salivating, like, oh my god, I need to play this game. But yeah, so I ended up buying it, I believe, around close to my birthday as well. So my birthday is in May. I probably got it at around March or April or something, which was really nice. Like a sense of achievement or something that I got when I finally got the money to buy this was amazing. Do you guys remember? And I know probably Lewis and Andrew, you remember, even because maybe you talked on this during the Dream Pod, but do you guys really even remember in your memories anything related to the launch of the Dreamcast? Anything on TV, on magazines, anything that you even remotely remember seeing at around that time?
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember watching exactly the whale chase at Sonic Adventure. It was at a video rental store I went. They had the Dreamcast. They imported it from Japan, and it was earlier than the European date. And I remember watching it there and looking at this and saying, wow, Sonic's so cool now. Because I remember Sonic from the Master System. So I loved it. But never got the step to say, I want to buy it. Just look at it and say, it's too cool. And the intro for Sonic Adventure, the intro movie, that was amazing back then. I saw it, was amazing. But what I saw there.
That's
Also,
true.
we had TV adverts.
Okay.
Back in Spain.
Specifically dedicated to Sonic Adventure or the Dreamcast?
About Dreamcast, but I think I saw Sonic Adventure 1 or 2.
Okay.
And the magazine, the official Dreamcast magazine, you got one. But we had that at the stores and around that.
Okay. What about you guys? I think Lewis was about to say something as well.
I was about to defer to Andrew because all I knew was through osmosis of my friend having one.
I probably saw some of the adverts in the magazines at the time because I see them now obviously in the official Dreamcast magazine that I have because I've got like the whole collection, but they obviously ran those adverts in Games Master, CVG, all those kind of magazines. So I don't remember, but I know that I probably did see them. My memory of being 15 is very, very hazy. But I would have seen those adverts in those magazines at the time, and those were some interesting adverts that they ran in the magazines for the UK. Some interesting ones. I know that they had like in front of fans, but unfortunately I wasn't a Star Wars fan at the time. So I didn't go see Phantom Menace. So I didn't see the advert. So what I'm doing is I'm telling you what I didn't see or what I think I did see. Less about it.
Yeah, I saw Phantom Menace, so I should have seen the adverts, but I cannot remember. So
I didn't see Phantom Menace at the theater either, so didn't experience that. Yeah, I know, but but I also don't really remember like properly remember anything in terms of adverts. I know there were some. I remember one piece of like advertisement that I remember seeing was like flyers at game stores. So in Portugal, we had SEGA Portugal, which was nothing but a company like who licensed the SEGA brand and acted as SEGA of Portugal, called Eco Films, which you guys mentioned during the Dream Pod as well. So Eco Films did their own marketing as well. We actually had like Echo Films made kiosks for the Dreamcast at certain places, and that I remember. I remember some flyers that like were Dreamcast branded and showed some of the games, but I don't really remember specifically like TV adverts ahead of launch. I think I remember something Sonic Adventure related, because Sonic was big here. And even the Saturn was really big in Portugal until some point. And then the PlayStation took over. But at like the first 2-3 years, probably, the Saturn was really successful here in Portugal. But I also remember there was a TV show called Templo dos Jogos, so it's like the Temple of Games, and they showed a lot of Dreamcast games. I remember seeing Power Stone, Sonic Adventure, Soul Calibur is one that stuck in my head as well. Probably Toy Commander as well, I remember, and maybe Trick Style, probably. So, and those I think were shown ahead of launch on that show, like previews. And when the console launched in the US, like a month prior, they also covered that as well. So I do remember that. I don't remember anything fancy like launch parties or like any specific events like I know you guys had in the UK, like really decadent parties, perhaps. I don't think there were like real celebrities over here at that time. But I do. So last week I was invited on a Portuguese podcast to celebrate the anniversary of Dreamcast as well, and something that I hadn't thought about in ages came back because one of the guys mentioned it. So 2000 was the year of the first edition of Big Brother in Portugal. Okay, I don't know when it debuted in the UK or Spain, but in Portugal, 2000 was the year, and so it was like late 2000, and they had a Dreamcast in the Big Brother house, and the guys played. They even played Shenmue, or tried to play Shenmue because they didn't know how to play. They were a little bit dumb. And but they had a Dreamcast in the Big Brother house, which probably a genius move because it was like the biggest thing ever on Portuguese television. It was like a real phenomenon, and people were like every day trying to follow everything that happened with those guys. It
was like that in the UK as well. I remember my sister like printing out all the pictures and like crossing them off when they got evicted. I don't remember a Dreamcast in the UK Big Brother house, but if it wasn't a UK Big Brother house, it would have probably been used as a weapon against, because of the amount of fights that broke out and things thrown on that show.
It would have been a weapon or something to drink out of, probably.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Wikipedia. The UK one launched the same year, so 2000. So yeah, it would have been the same time.
Yeah.
Here in Spain, We had video games in Big Brother too, but it was a GameCube.
Okay.
Oh, right.
So basically a Dreamcast then. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Like we've established at this point. Yeah. Yeah. So Big Brother is the same everywhere. There were fights here as well. One of the contestants was expelled because he like kicked one of the girls and like, yeah.
Wow.
Nice. Classy people. Yeah, for sure. Like the cream of the crop. But yeah, what about you, Ash? Any kind of memory of like any kind of event or something or party that you heard of even later?
Yes, yes.
Oh, really?
I remember reading about a big launch party we had at Madrid amusement park for Dreamcast launch.
Nice.
I know there was big, and they even have a person in a Sonic costume there. Uh, I know it was big. I was not there because I was young. I was 2 years old, but game journalists went, and I remember seeing photos about that in Game Magazine. That
Mhm. Nice. Yeah, obviously. So the UK, the biggest one, but UK, France, Germany, and Spain were like the four big markets that Sega of Europe tried to push the Dreamcast, and like the launch parties there were, or launch parties made sense there because of that. I don't know if around other countries, and if you're listening to this and you're from one of the other countries, I said, which one did I say? I missed France as well. I think we're five, right?
Yeah, UK, France,
Probably.
Spain, Germany. That was it, I think.
Yeah, Spain as well. No, I think
Yeah,
so.
Spain.
And Italy,
Not
perhaps.
Italy.
Not
Wasn't a
Italy.
key
Okay,
market. Yeah, or
probably
Portugal.
Spain.
Yeah.
Portugal, I think, was like one of the the second wave of like marketing in terms of budget or something. I believe.
I think the interesting thing about the European launch is because I suppose it's so vast, like the PAL territory, and there's so many different languages. Is that from an English speaker's point of view, like to find information about certain areas that is more than just this was the distributor, these are the people who did the internet. Like so to hear Ash talk about Spain having like a launch party, that's really interesting because I didn't actually find that in my research.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that as well. I actually try to research a little bit in terms of what happened in Portugal. And we don't really have a lot of information like preserved, even video game magazines. I think we need to do a better job at preserving those and scanning them and getting them online. But I found a couple of newspaper articles. So, for example, on the 6th of September, 1999, a journalist called Miguel Crespo wrote for Público, which is a newspaper over here, and he actually said that the first 128-bit console is going to be released by Sega on the 14th of October. Initially to be launched on the 23rd of September, they actually delayed the launch by 3 weeks. And that makes the expectation, the hype grow, he said. I don't know if he was right, but okay. But he mentioned a couple of things that made the Dreamcast like a very enticing and exciting project. The first thing, the first console in the 128-bit generation. Nintendo failed with the N64, he said. Boo, Nintendo. The PlayStation and the Sega Saturn were only 32-bit consoles, so this is an exponential growth in terms of power. Also, it's exciting because in Japan and the US, he said, the Dreamcast hasn't been getting the success they hoped for. He wrote on the 6th of September, which means that the US didn't have a Dreamcast yet. So he wrote 3 days in advance that it wasn't really successful in the US. Of course not. They haven't launched it yet. So hold your horses.
I think the launch was one of the launches of the Dreamcast were probably the most successful thing commercially for the console. I think
For
it
sure.
kind of petered out after that, unfortunately.
You can't blame it on the launch window. Everything went amazingly, especially in the US and in Europe as well. But he also said we've tried several of the 30 games which will be available at launch. Okay, maybe he means like launch window, like.
Yeah.
Okay. But he says several of the games we've tried left us with a very strong impression. So yeah, that's nice. And the peripherals. He talked about the VMU. And he also mentioned the online capabilities of the console, which was another thing that I wanted to mention. So obviously in the UK, the online was available at launch-ish, I believe. I don't know what happened in Spain. Do you know, Ash? Have you any idea if it was available at launch or not?
The BMU, yes, it was available at launch, and people loved it. It was something people who was not a really gamer or not a Sega fan that saw it at store or whatever, and liked it. Like it was sort of Tamagotchi that made them interested in it.
Yeah. What about the online modes? Was online?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
at
had
launch.
it. Yes. In fact, we had a partnership between Sega and Telefonica to made a special offer to offer, I don't know how to say it in English, like unlimited internet time from 1 hour to another hour. I don't know how to say that with the specific word,
Yeah.
but they commercialized it. Like especially made for Dreamcast from this time to that time, you pay this and it's free to use the internet.
Okay.
And that we had that too.
Excellent. Yeah. So, Telefonica in Spain, BT in the UK, and Portugal PT, which is Portugal Telecom, doesn't exist anymore. It's been called a couple of things since. And so, but in Portugal, I found an article because I didn't. I knew it wasn't available at launch, but I found an article on another newspaper. And apparently it was available in November 2000.
It's quite a while afterwards.
Yeah, thanks to a deal with between Echo Films and PT. And so it's interestingly enough, they mentioned. So this article is dated the 12th of November 2000. And they mention, of course, because everything at that time mentioned, anything Dreamcast mentioned, the PlayStation 2. So they say, oh, it's interesting that less than 2 weeks before the Dreamcast has to compete with the PlayStation 2 in Portugal, Sega now has online capabilities on their Dreamcast. So maybe that will be a strong point for the console in a way to combat the Dreamcast. Maybe. Spoilers, not really. They actually mentioned receiving and sending emails as a big thing you could do on the Dreamcast. Wow. Did you guys ever back in the day, not right now, but back in the day, you guys ever used the Dreamcast as anything more than a games console? Did you use it to surf the internet and?
Yeah,
I did not. I didn't have a Dreamcast back then, but my partner, who is right here, he did, and he was his first contact with the internet. So he used Dream Arena to talk to people. He remembers a lot and always talk to me the 11.9, the Twin Towers, how it was lived back at the Dreamcast, at the Dream Arena that day. He always talk about that. So yeah, and also how he worked emails, how he chat with other Sega fans, that he was really, really loving the internet capabilities of Dreamcast.
Okay, awesome. Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I used it to surf the internet a little bit. I think I had a computer at that point, so I didn't use it a huge amount because although it was great, it was very like finicky, and the screen wasn't great because everything was huge. You were looking at it on your like living room TV, and all the text would be massive, and it was just like not laid out particularly well when you're kind of used to using the internet from a regular computer. But it was good that you had that ability, and I can only imagine that, like you say, Ash, people whose first interaction with the internet would be the Dreamcast. I know that in Japan, I think that was the case for some people as well. It was just, the fact that you could plug that into your TV and access the internet. And in the UK, it was free as well. BT basically allowed you to use the internet for free. Well, it's the price of the phone call, I think, but you didn't have to pay a charge for your ISP, which was great. So yeah, I think I used it a little bit more because of that fact that you didn't have to pay the ISP charge. So occasionally I would use it instead of my usual computer. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that I found another article about the Dreamcast's online capabilities. And they said that the Dreamcast at the time, so this is the 20th of November, 2000. So Sega sold 15,000 consoles till the end of September in Portugal, but hoped to sell 70,000 by Christmas. Not sure, but maybe I have no idea. I have no definitive numbers. So Portugal was the 6th European country to offer online services on the Dreamcast, apparently. Yeah. And people who the first 30,000 to register, 30,000 consoles or players registered would get a free Dreamcast keyboard.
Ooh.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah.
Sega got in trouble in the UK for their advertising slogan, up to 6 billion players. And through our research, I mean, we've learned that there wouldn't have been 6 billion players anyway, because if there was, the Dreamcast would have lived. But, I think you said, Andrew, like New Zealand didn't even get online at all. So like even you're saying there, Casey, like Portugal didn't get it until like a year later. And as you kind of look into other countries, in the PAL region, there's just so many where the difference in support and is just like completely different. You've got the main countries that had all these big parties and all the internet worked, and then you just have like, I don't know, like we were saying, New Zealand, who were just kind of over there, left to have no internet, no fun, and so yeah.
Yeah, and so when I was researching for this, I went back to episode 112 of the Dream Pod. Actually, you were there, Andrew, with Tom, and you talked to Giles Thomas, former marketing director, I think, at Sega Europe, and he mentioned that his bosses, when it came to going on the BBC on the show Watchdog, right? His bosses left the building and he had to go there all by himself and defend the honor of Sega and the Dreamcast, because they weren't supposed to do that, like fake advertising that it's up to 6 billion players. It wasn't even possible to connect to other countries outside of Europe as well either, right? So the infrastructure was Europe only, so that even if New Zealand could access the internet, we wouldn't play against New Zealand, like Kiwi players either. It wouldn't happen.
And it was Anne Robinson who grilled Giles. I don't know if you've ever seen her on like
On
a show
the
called
Weakest Link. Yeah.
She's scary. I mean, that was her whole
Yeah.
thing, wasn't it? As a shtick, that she was like this very stern, like very sharp woman, a presenter. But yeah, I wouldn't want to face her.
Quite interesting as well, because basically most of the trouble that Sega got into was around the online thing, because the reason as well that we didn't get the 9/9/99 date was all because of the online aspect, because BT weren't ready to roll out the internet, and BT were working with the other European countries in order to get the infrastructure ready for online, and so they basically kept delaying because the online features weren't ready. So yeah, the internet basically just got Sega into lots of trouble. So
yeah. I didn't know before I listened to this episode of the Dream Pod. I don't know when this launched, maybe like 2 years ago or something. I didn't know that Anne Robinson was like this on other shows. I thought that was like because in Portugal, the Weakest Link was hosted by different people throughout the years, and they were all like very nice presenters.
Wow.
But for the Weakest Link, they were like terrible, like sarcastic and like very serious, just like Anne Robinson. But she was like this before the Weakest Link, apparently. Didn't know that. So yeah, that's interesting. One last thing about this article that I found interesting is they talk about the games that you will potentially be able to play in online on the Dreamcast, and they say for now just Choo Choo Rocket, but coming up soon, Quake 3 Arena, Speed Devils Online, Phantasy Star Online, Pot 2, Arrow Wings Airstrike, Star Lancer, Daytona Online, 18 Wheeler, and Black and White. And then they mention not like playing, but online functions. So not gameplay, but functions, online functionalities. In terms of MSR, Metropolis, MSR Metropolis, that's the name they go with, MSR Metropolis, Sega GT, Jet Set Radio Shenmue, Sega Extreme Sports, and Virtua Athlete 2K. Okay. So they, this is actually a very comprehensive article about the upcoming online functionalities of the Dreamcast. Interesting. Well done, Miguel Crespo. Very nice journalism here. Yeah. Okay, and so let's move on to the games themselves. I know, Lewis, we talked about this before the show, but there is a little bit like we're not really sure, I think, how many games were really launched on 14/10/99. But I'm gonna go with Andrew's take on this, with the 19 games that you mentioned in year one, because even if they weren't exactly released on launch date, but they were at least released like close to launch date, right?
Yeah, exactly. As far as I could tell, that's what trying to do the research for that, trying to find release dates for 25-year-old games, or it was about 20 years old when I did the book, was ridiculously hard. They just don't exist in some places, and some people contradicted each other. Even now, if you go to Sega Retro, one part of their site states there were 12 launch games, another states there's 16.
Exactly.
So nobody can agree, and those are the ones I found. I kind of like checked multiple sources, and I was like, that's what I think it was. But like you say, even if that isn't the case, they were probably within a week or so of launch, some of those games. So they're basically launch games.
The closest I got to like a definitive list was a Dreamcast magazine in the UK had like this is from the charts of EB Games, and it had 12. But then I've had people like Tom from the Junkyard say, oh, but I had this game and that's not in the list, and stuff like that. So it's everyone thinks Sega Bass Fishing was a launch game, which was delayed.
It came out April the next year, so it definitely wasn't launched.
Memories are tricky. Yeah.
I guess it's because of all the different regions. I don't know if that had anything to do with games being kind of all over the place with release dates. I'm not sure.
Like I could have sworn that Soul Calibur was a launch game.
It was in US.
Yeah, but it wasn't in Europe. So I remember it wasn't one of the big things that people talked about even before launch. So, and in my mind, it was a launch game. So I realized now that it wasn't. So the 19 games that people can find, like add Dreamcast Year One. It's not available anymore, though, right? At least for now.
Not physically,
Not
but
physically.
you can get the digital copy still. Yeah.
Okay, so add. Get the digital one. So incoming: Millennium Soldier Expendable, Mortal Kombat Gold, Pen Triathlon, Sega Rally 2, Sonic Adventure, Speed Devils, Tokyo Highway Challenge, Blue Stinger, Buggy Heat, Dynamite Cop, Hydro Thunder, Power Stone, Racing Simulation Monaco Grand Prix, Ready to Rumble Boxing, Toy Commander, Trick Style, UEFA Striker, Virtua Fighter 3 TB. These are the 19 probable games to have been released alongside the launch of the console. So I wanted to ask you guys, even if you didn't get the console on launch, even if you didn't play these games on launch, out of all of these, which one is your favorite, first of all?
I think it's too easy to say Sonic Adventure, but aside of that, I like a lot Dynamic Cop. It's a great game.
Okay, that's a nice shout. Why?
Because it's so crazy. It's a very fun game. I already knew about the Dynamic here.
Die Hard Arcade, right? On the Saturn. Yeah.
I have to translate in my mind because in Spanish it's called Jungla de Cristal. So we have to. It's very
Can you say
different.
that again? Can you say that again a little bit slowly?
Sorry, I say that I have to translate in my mind.
No, but I asked the name of the game in Spanish.
Jungla de Cristal is how the name
Oh,
of the
like
game.
Crystal
And the
Jungle?
movie,
No.
the original, the Saturn one, Jungla de Cristal Arcade. The
What's
first
the meaning of that?
game. And I knew about that because of arcades. I did not play it Saturn, but it was hard for me to say the name in English because it's different here in Spain.
Okay. Yeah, Die Hard Arcade was actually quite fun game. I don't know if I think the first one, I think Die Hard Arcade is a little bit, is less, is more forgivable for me than Dynamite Cop. It's like a little bit clunky, but it's fun. It's a fun game, right? I don't know if I'm alone on this or not, but it's an interesting game. Yeah.
I had to look this up. So the Spanish name that you just saying, so Jungla de Cristal, it translates to Jungle of Glass. Jungle of Glass is the Spanish title of Die Hard.
Okay. I said Crystal Jungle. I was close. Yeah.
I suppose that makes sense now I'm thinking about the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, like a big skyscraper filled with with glass windows.
He keeps walking on broken glass as well, doesn't he? At some point.
True,
That's true. Yeah.
Did it have a different name in Portuguese as well, or was it just called Die Hard there?
We didn't have like localized or translated titles or games here, so that's why we're familiar with the English titles and character names and stuff. Yeah. So usually you had things localized to Spanish, French, German, and Italian, I think. I believe so. Even during the Master System and Mega Drive games era and Saturn. But we always got the English versions, and just like a very poorly printed out manual in black and white, which was translated to Portuguese. So the manuals we got it in Portuguese, but everything else was in English. Yeah. Okay,
but we
so
got the game in English too, but I remember it from the movie.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Okay, so Dynamite Cop is Ash's pick. What about you, Lewis? Out of these 19?
I think, to be honest, Dynamite Cop is excellent. Like, just that to me is like the perfect kind of insane over the top game for me. And I probably have to say something like Power Stone, but then again, I like Power Stone 2 more. So I might even lean towards Sonic Adventure. I know it's like an unpopular opinion. Like that game seems to kind of gets like dumped on a lot online. I know, and it's not aged well. But what's Andrew? Oh,
I dump on it.
yeah. I think it's good. I like Sonic Adventure. I mean, you can't not play that first level and just fall in love. And even some of the other levels after that, it's not just the one level. It's not just a one-trick pony game. I also like that there's a Knights pinball table in it because I love that game. But yeah, so I would probably say Sonic Adventure. I mean, that is the flagship title out of this list, isn't it? So yeah, that's probably my pick. But yeah, Power Stone and Dynamite Cop in particular are like close.
Yeah. I'm going to spoil things and say mine as well. This is mine, Sonic Adventure. And I don't care who dumps on it. It's people have bad taste.
Hey, enjoy what you enjoy.
But I understand. I used to prefer Sonic Adventure 2 to this one. And as I got older, I find myself coming back to this one quite often and being able to play it. Like, unironically, this is one of my favorite games ever. And not so much Sonic Adventure 2, which back in the day, I thought, oh, Sonic Adventure 2 is amazing. It's like such a great story. It's so badass. And like they're in space. But nowadays, there are a lot of like the gameplay elements of Sonic Adventure, which make more sense to me than the ones in Sonic Adventure 2, particularly like Knuckles and Rouge. The Knuckles and Rouge stages are not as good as the Knuckles stages in Sonic Adventure 1. But I understand.
I hated that they got rid of the overworld kind of explorable like town and stuff as well. That was a bit of a step down in my opinion, So and I like the way that you could just like pick who you wanted to be, whereas when I'm playing Sonic Adventure 2, I'm like, oh, I'm Knuckles and I'm like looking for things and it's like not as interesting. I just want to go fast.
That's a good point, right? So you can't like choose the order in which you do things, right? You have to play as this, like in this specific order they put out in front of you. Yeah. Are any E102 Gamma fans here?
Oh yeah.
That was cool. Yeah.
Was he in Sonic Heroes?
Enthusiasm. Yeah.
I don't like it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Gamma's stages are like the precursor of what Eggman and Tails were in Sonic Adventure 2. But I feel like the Eggman and Tails stages overstay their welcome a little bit. So that's why I actually prefer that. I don't know. Maybe it's a hot take. Andrew's like trying to control himself. Okay.
That's fine. I've just zoned out. I'm just kind
of. Has your camera frozen again? No. Okay. Of course. And if we're gonna talk about Sonic Adventure, we have to talk about Big the Cat, right? This is the best character ever. Like, I don't know why we've had Fearless, Year of Shadow the Hedgehog, but not like Lazy, Year of Big the Cat. I would be on board with that. I'm my spirit animal is Big the Cat. That's all I gotta say.
I think they should have done the new Sonic Generations reboot and had it instead of Shadow and Sonic, it should have just been Sonic and Big the Cat. That is what should have happened.
You speak the truth, my friend.
Big the Cat spin-off game or fishing. That would be great. Like SEGA fishing, but with Big the Cat.
Yeah. And just Froggy.
Yeah.
You have to find Froggy somewhere like in a big lake. You just have to find Froggy, and Froggy is hard to get as well. Yeah, that's what should happen. Make it happen, Sega. Make it happen. Okay, Andrew, what about your launch game of choice?
There's a lot of good ones. I mean, Hydro Thunder is actually a really fun game, for instance. But I mean, I got it with my Dreamcast, and so it has to be Power Stone. It's just such an incredible game. It is. I was never a Street Fighter fan, so Capcom Fighters, the 2D kind of fighters, which is my thing. I kind of got into Tekken, that was okay, and then I got into Dead or Alive later, thanks to Dead or Alive 2. But it was Power Stone that really got me into fighting games properly. Like the 3D arenas were incredible. The different characters and the powers that they had, the weapons that you could find, the fact that collecting all 3 Power Stones to become like the Super Saiyan version of your character was just like incredible. It was just such a well put together game, and all the stages were so. I mean, there's some stages that are better than others. Like the London stage is incredible when you can pick up the billboard signs and throw them at people, swing around the lamppost, go into the fountain. Oh, it's just it's probably one of the most perfect fighting games that there's ever been. I get that Power Stone 2 is much better in terms of the fact you can play with more people and there's more weapons and stuff, but I think that the nature of everything being condensed into like this small cube of a level, with 2 people fighting each other, there was just something about it that I really enjoyed, and I'm so happy that they're bringing that now to Switch with the new Capcom Fighting Collection they're doing, because that is well overdue for that to be on a console other than the Dreamcast and the PSP. So yeah, I'm very excited for that, and love this game. I could play this all day and never get bored of it. So
I was just going to say, I know obviously it gets a lot of comparisons, like saying it's Smash Brothers on the Dreamcast, and you know, obviously, you know, it's not completely the same, but I just feel like, you know, why did Capcom never continue this series? I just feel like it had so much potential. It's such an easy to pick up and play game as well. Like, you know, it's not like Street Fighter where if you play against someone who knows all the combos. Like I went to the Berry Arcade Club not too long ago, and my friend's mate was there who's like an expert at Street Fighter, and I literally, I shouldn't have even bothered touching the buttons. I did that much. He just absolutely whooped me. And you know, this game, on the other hand, you can do like combos and stuff, but like, you know, it's so easy to just run around, pick up weapons, you know, pick like in the footage, picking up like furniture and lobbing them at each other, and yeah, so it's excellent.
I was just thinking about, I was listening to you and thinking about the definition or the use of the word arcade to refer sometimes to more like easier games and easier to pick up and play. But usually 2D fighting games are not arcadey in that sense. They are really good arcade games, but they are not really that easy to master, right? Whereas something like Power Stone, you know, to master, not easy, but to pick up and like get a fighting chance and a winning chance. And also thanks to the Power Stones as well, like the special attacks. It's more fun, I think. And it's like the perfect arcadey type game, I think, as well. I'm actually very curious to see how it will translate online, because I believe you can play online in this new like re-release.
Yeah.
I'm curious to try it out. So yeah, I actually was playing this yesterday. This is not my footage, by the way. Shout out to World of Long Plays, which is a nice YouTube channel that is great to just show gameplay as we speak. But I was playing this yesterday and I really enjoyed myself. So I never played this with friends back in the day, but I believe it was like a very cool and fun experience. So I'm definitely,
it's one of those you shout at each other when you're playing this, because you've kind of like, somebody got the weapon you wanted, or they throw something at you and you didn't see it, and they get all the power stones or whatever. It's like I remember shouting so hard. Power Stone 2 as well, of course. You've got 4 people to shout at each other, but this was just it's incredible.
Unfortunately, Power Stone doesn't work on my Dreamcast that I got. The one I got like when I first started collecting. I tried, I think, 2-3 copies of Power Stone. It always crashes on a specific loading screen. Virtua Fighter 3 TB does it as well. The Japanese version you can play to completion, and all I can find about that is that like IDOS blamed some of the specific Dreamcasts that were made, like they had like a dodgy drives or something, but it's literally just those 2 games that don't play, so who knows.
That's weird. Okay, how many Dreamcasts do you have, Lewis?
I have 2.5. Yeah, one of them needs repairing, so yeah. one's disc, one's GDMU, and the other one that's not working is a disc one. Yeah.
Okay. So we picked some interesting launch games. Were the games that you guys mentioned the ones you would have picked up today if the Dreamcast launched on the 14th of October 2014 with these 19 games, or not? Andrews, is questioning his life choices now.
I'm thinking about it. No, I think I would, because I still don't like Sonic Adventure, so that wouldn't be one that I picked up. I don't hate it. I love the first level. They just
for shame. For shame.
I know Sonic's just not for me. No, Power Stone. I think that I would probably still pick that up because it's still a great fun game now. But then I think that probably all of the games on that list are still great fun games today. I mean, when we're on the Dream Pod with Tom that you listened to the other day, he mentioned that UEFA Striker is one that he would play, and I kind of questioned that. He went, "Oh, it's probably the best football game on the Dreamcast." So of course, and it's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that it was that decent. So I think all of the games have stood up pretty well.
I think probably like kind of agreeing with Andrew. I mean, the thing is, my kind of opinion on games were formed by the Dreamcast, I think, and I think if I was to pick the games though, it would always be the colourful, like high energy ones. Something like Pen appeals to me. Obviously the ones we've mentioned, maybe like Toy Commander, Trick Style, stuff like that definitely would have stood out to me. And I suppose that's me just kind of being biased because the Dreamcast is, the kind of games I like.
Yeah. I actually remember something. So with the Dreamcast, we also got a demo disc, Dream On Volume 1. And there were some games that I vividly remember and associate with the launch of the Dreamcast because I played them, like the demos, so much. Trick Style was one of them. Never was really good at it. Toy Commander, Ready to Rumble Boxing, I remember that as well. Was there anything else that I used to play? That was probably it, I think. But I remember spending a lot of time on the demos as well. Toy Commander, I actually got a lot, really into at some point. And then I ended up getting the full game years later. Because I mentioned this actually when I recorded for that Portuguese podcast last week. But what happened was, when I started getting more disposable income, the Dreamcast got discontinued. Which didn't matter to me because I still bought a lot of games and now they were heavily discounted. So I bought a lot of Dreamcast games and played them throughout the years. Even well into the Wii era and the PlayStation 3 era. I still had my little Dreamcast connected to my very small TV, a CRT TV in my bedroom. And really enjoyed my Dreamcast for a long time. So,
were you? Did you see any sealed games? Did you use eBay and stuff like that at the time?
Not really. I bought them all at game stores here. There was a specific one that was close to. Then when I started working close to my workplace, and they had a whole section of Dreamcast games well into like 2005, perhaps six, I don't know. And they were heavily discounted. So I ended up getting a lot of them because of that, and still playing them. So that's something that I don't think I ever did with any of the other consoles that I owned. So when the new one, the next one came out, at some point I got the new one and like left the other one in a box or something. The Dreamcast was always connected to my TV in my bedroom.
Did your Dreamcast last? Do you still have your launch Dreamcast?
It's this one that I showed you before. Yeah,
that's the one.
There was a problem with the drive at some point, but I got it fixed, and so I actually bought another one because of that. The other one actually had a problem with the drive as well, so I got them both fixed. Now I have two working ones.
Nice. Yeah. I remember I got mine, and then it broke around the time that they were heavily discounting the Dreamcasts. So I think I got a new Dreamcast with Metropolis Street Racer, Jet Set Radio, and Virtua Fighter 3TB for I think it was less than £100, maybe even less than that. I can't remember. But yeah, they were doing a whole bundle because they were just trying to get rid of them. But I don't even know if that's the one that I have anymore, because I then met my partner in university. He also had a Dreamcast, huge Sonic fan, loves Sonic. And at some point, one of them got lost. So the one that I have now that's the original is either mine or his, and I don't know which it is. So mine is possibly lost in the ether somewhere. So, yeah.
Okay. Ash, how many Dreamcasts do you have? I don't know if I asked you.
What? 6.
Oh my God.
Please
explain.
Between me and my partner, we have 6.
Okay.
The one I bought back then when I first had my Dreamcast, his first one. We had another one who is broken, a Japanese one, one complete in box like new, and I think we had 2 more because we had to have more to play.
Okay, of course. You can never have enough Dreamcasts. Oh, of course not. Okay. Awesome. There was something that I added to our outline. I said maybe our guilty pleasures. Do you guys have anything you can consider a guilty pleasure? Not really. I'm not going to be specific to this like launch window of games. Maybe we can talk about like the whole Dreamcast catalog. Is there a game that you guys enjoyed or played the heck out of that you objectively think or know that is not a good game? I have a couple, if you need me to go first.
The only game I can think of that's a guilty pleasure is not necessarily objectively a bad game, because it's not, but it's certainly one that I think a lot of people don't think of first when they think of the Dreamcast, and it's not something that a lot of people are that fond of. I know Lewis isn't, but mostly because he finds it difficult to play, and that's Space Channel 5. Like I was obsessed with Space Channel 5. I've completed that game 20 times. I got a perfect run on one of them, like every single one, even the chew after the credits. I got it because I played it 20 times and had memorized when everything came up. But yeah, that's like such a guilty pleasure. Like everybody else, like people would come to my house to play games, and I'd be like, I'm just going to do another run through of Space Channel 5 first, and then did the entire hour or so of Space Channel 5 before we'd play anything else. So yeah, I was addicted to that.
I don't think that's a guilty pleasure. That's a very good game, actually. And it's one of those that I would have never gotten if not for like the heavily discounted section of Dreamcast games on my like local game store. Because it's not, I don't think I would ever have considered getting like a rhythm game. And yeah, so I feel like,
I feel like now it's probably definitely not a guilty pleasure, but I feel like at the time it maybe was, because there's like that, it was like late 90s, early 2000s, and all of your friends would be like, oh, are you playing FIFA, or are you playing this, that, and the other? And there I was playing like a pink-haired space reporter. It's like, it wasn't the kind of game that everybody would be playing at the time. So I think it was a guilty pleasure in my friend group, I would be looked down upon for playing this game. I remember my brother laughing at me several times for playing Space Channel 5. But yeah, it's objectively it's a very, very good game. But yeah, at the time maybe a bit like not so much.
I remember my mum looking at the game and asking, "What the hell is that?" Obviously, she didn't say hell, but okay. So, so she's a reporter and she's saving people and fighting aliens, of course. And she just went away without saying anything else, because why not? And then there's Space Michael as well. So what's not to like?
She teams up with Michael Jackson, yeah.
Of course.
Twice.
Exactly. And the second one even has like a Tom Jones version of a song. So it's brilliant soundtrack. Sorry, Yash, I interrupted you.
I really love that game. I don't consider it my guilty pleasure because I am not ashamed of liking it. But what I like, and no many people understand I like that, is Sega Bass Fishing. I actually like it. I like fishing in video games. And that's probably because of Pick the Cap. But yeah, I enjoy playing it. I'm not ashamed, but not many people follow what I try to say when I play it and say play it. It's very fun. They don't.
I haven't played it that much, to be honest, but I don't consider it to be like a bad game either. It's like it's a different kind of game.
It's
right?
not that different.
It's incredibly Sega.
The same could be said about Space Channel 5.
Of course.
To be honest.
Of course.
Right? No way.
I feel like we're going to say this about most games. I think that the truly guilty pleasures will be things like Spirit of Speed and The Ring Terror's Realm and stuff like that. But the only people I know who truly like those games are people like James Harvey. I don't know if I know anybody who likes The Ring Terror's Realm, but you know.
Andrew, I was about to call that my guilty pleasure because that
really.
When I say guilty pleasure, like I don't enjoy playing that game. It's just there was this one YouTuber called Spoony who did a video on it, and some of the lines and the dialogue and just the whole premise of that game is hilarious. Like, there's this one scene in it where the main character's like husband or partner has just been killed by the ring, and she like breaks down crying, and this random police officer who's at the crime scene just goes, "You okay, lady?" Like, really, like.
I remember that.
It's flat. Yeah.
I remember seeing that somewhere. I haven't played the game, but I remember that moment from somewhere.
It's like her partner's just died, and he's just like, "You all right there?" Like, you know, yeah. And like the whole premise of the game, half of it is just walking around these office buildings, and it's just, yeah, it's bad. But it's a shame because like it would have been really cool to have a Ring survival horror game. I'm sure Andrew can agree.
Love The Ring. That's kind of why I've never played it, because I know the perception of it is terrible, and I love the film so much that I didn't want to muddy my vision of the films by playing a game like that, basically. But now I feel like I should, maybe.
Yeah, there's a bit where she like turns up to her office like the next day, and she's like, "I can't mope around forever about my deceased partner." And it's like, dude, like. Just take a day off.
The Ring. That's. I think this is a good guilty pleasure. Yeah. Mine, I think, is also a good one, which is 90 Minutes. Another football game. So again, it's not that I like it; it's that I've spent a lot of time with it, and I played it a lot. So I think it's a well-known fact that the Dreamcast wasn't really that great for like football/soccer games for our American friends listening to us.
One of the worst ones.
Apparently UEFA Striker is one of the better ones, apparently, according to Tom, right? I didn't
Tom,
know that. I didn't know any better. So I got 90 minutes, which looked like, oh, this is like a brilliant game from the cover. It's like you can. And the thing for me is you could customize like everything, like the teams, the equipments, the names. You could like customize everything. I'm gonna show a little bit of footage from this, but you really have to play this. You had all the tournaments as well. With different names, but you had like the World Championship and things like that. And so the thing that I spent the most time with was like customizing, like adding a new team and customizing it to include the names of all of my friends. We had like a weekly football game every weekend, and so we had the names, like I had the names of all of my friends, like the correct positions on the pitch and everything. And yeah, but it's objectively a very, very bad football game. And I knew that.
Sorry,
I still played it. No. I was saying I knew it was a bad game, but it was the one that I had on the Dreamcast, and I played the heck out of it.
I remember Tom from the Junkyard wrote a blog about it, and he was giving it a play, and he was sort of feeding back like his reaction to it via like text message in our group chat for the Junkyard, and I think he said something like, the goalie caught the ball and walked backwards into the goal, and I got a point.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And what's interesting is the Japanese version's apparently better for some reason.
I think I read that on the Junkyard at some point. I don't really remember why, but it's not that much better either. It's like there's something about it that's better, but like it's not as bad. Maybe that's the better way to put it, I think. Yeah, and this was developed by Smilebit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the biggest crime of all.
Interesting, right? Interesting.
That is true. There is as well. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So that's one that they don't put on the website. Oh, we've developed this 90 minutes championship football or Sega championship football. This was the Sega football game, right? Because we had Sega Worldwide Soccer, but that was developed by, was it like Crystal Dynamics? I think so.
You had Virtua Striker as well.
You had Virtua Striker as well. Okay, yeah, but that's more like an arcadey type.
Yeah.
And this is like the proper sim type game.
Yeah.
If football was boring, which I know for some people it is. But okay, so that's my guilty pleasure.
I got one that is based Channel 5 that I think you will, coming out of left field. If you else remember Dragon Riders Chronicles of Pern.
I don't even know what that is.
Did you have that game, Andrew?
I did, yeah. It's one that I sold and I really regret it because I didn't ever finish it, but I got quite far, and it's an RPG that's based on like this novel series, and it's incredibly dull, but also because there were so few RPGs and stuff on the console, I actually quite enjoyed what I played of it. You actually get to, it's like the whole thing is that you can ride dragons and stuff. There's not that much of that in there because most of the time you're just walking around speaking to people. But I quite enjoyed it. It was an interesting game. It looks awful. I mean, looking at it now, that looks absolutely terrible. But it was fun. It was all right. Maybe fun's too good of a word. It was all right.
Is that a dragon like breathing in the background, or is it the actual background moving for some reason?
That will be a dragon. Yes,
okay, that's better then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It was like...
Did you sell it for much, Andrew?
It was a long time ago that I sold this, so probably not. It was probably when things was.
This is like a £200 game now.
It is ridiculously pricey.
Really?
It's one of those that. Yeah, if I don't think they printed that many of them. I think it's quite rare because it's there wasn't that many actually printed. But yeah, it's along with Project Justice, it's one of the games I wish I could buy back, but can't because it's far too expensive now.
And you had a belt knife.
I got the game too because I love the book series, and I always wanted to play the game, but it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it like fully voice acted as well?
I don't recall. I think there was some voice acting. I don't know if it was full on everything.
At least
let's find out.
I don't think I can share audio, but I can. Yeah. Crappy voice acting, but it's okay because that's what was supposed to happen back in that time. Yeah.
House of the Dead 2.
Yeah.
Even Shenmue. But okay. But it makes it better, right? Let's go with that.
But you've learned about a new Dreamcast game now, and not that you can afford to buy it, but you can try and find a way to play it for sure.
For sure. Dragon Riders Chronicles of Pern. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing the pain.
You're welcome. Guilty pleasure. There was some pleasure.
Awesome. So we're very close to like rounding this out with like the legacy of Dreamcast. I just wanted to mention something briefly. So I already talked about the Dreamcast being at the Big Brother house in Portugal, which is like a big pop culture moment. I think I would like to know the effect of that in terms of sales. I would love to know that. It's very hard to find anyone connected to Echo Films here in Portugal to talk to. I've tried to find people, but it's really, really hard. If you're somehow listening to this and you're part of the history of the Dreamcast or Sega in Portugal, let me know. Podcast at thesegalounge.com. We would love to hear from you and interview you on the show. But
that'd be so interesting.
Really nice, because I have very fond memories of those days and like having the Sega Club as well here. I was a member of the Sega Club here, like getting letters from Sonic the Hedgehog himself. Was amazing. But having said that, that's one of like those pop culture moments here that we remember from the Dreamcast days in Portugal. Is there anything like that you guys remember or have researched in the UK, in Spain? Anything you'd like to mention?
The biggest one for me was that they got Lara Croft to advertise the Dreamcast here, which was, I don't know if that was the same in Europe in general, but we had advertisements. It wasn't at launch, but it was like during the life of the Dreamcast, and that was quite interesting. I know that they had a Tomb Raider game on Dreamcast, but it was kind of just interesting that Lara Croft and Dreamcast were in adverts. There was TV adverts, there was print adverts, and I think that got a lot more people, especially in my friend group, to talk about it because they love Tomb Raider, they love Lara Croft, and all of a sudden she was there like holding a CGI Dreamcast.
I remember
so
that here.
That was an interesting thing. Yeah,
I remember that. Was it like The Last Revelation, the game? I think so.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one.
Chronicles as well, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My big one is I remember Arsenal, the British FA Cup. I'm not very good at football, and obviously Arsenal, the team, they had Dreamcast on their kit. I think maybe the goalie had like Sega. It's just the away and home kits, they differed, and Thierry Henry, like he was like the biggest footballer, like obviously not being like the biggest football fan myself, but I knew who he was. And you can find photographs online of him like with the Dreamcast football strip, or even I think even holding a Dreamcast. So and I think obviously Arsenal were doing like really well during that time as well, so but I guess it didn't sell that many Dreamcasts, unfortunately.
There were 4 football teams, weren't there? Because I think there might have been a Spanish one as well.
Deportivo La Coruña, right?
Yes. Deportivo de La Coruña.
Yeah. Sampdoria in Italy and Saint-Etienne in France, I believe, were the 4. And I think apparently the portion of the budget, of the marketing budget they spent on this alone was insane. So I would really love to know the payoff of this for Sega, because I don't know, and especially I don't know if were the teams well picked. I mean, I remember Arsenal. I'm not very familiar with the Italian and French teams. I remember at some point, maybe during these times, La Coruña was like doing really well. Probably. Am I right, Ash? Maybe.
Yeah, it was good. It's not of the biggest teams in Spain, but back in that time, it was doing really good. So I think it was a good idea to marketing it up there.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the logic was behind this because thinking about like the colors, Arsenal is red, right? La Coruña blue and white. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about the other ones, but it doesn't really. That's not the reason, apparently. So
My
I don't know.
favourite tidbit about the Arsenal team is that their goalkeeper was called David Seaman.
Exactly.
Well, Seaman, but Seaman.
Yeah.
So he had Dreamcast on the front and Seaman on the back, and that's just brilliant. I wonder if anyone ever told him, like, you know,
Guerrilla
the kind
marketing
of-
for the game.
Yeah.
Did they ever? That's something that I have always wondered. Did they ever take advantage of that, like to promote the game? Probably not, right? No,
They
probably
should
not.
have.
They
Well,
should
it
have.
wasn't released in Europe, was it? So, like,
Oh
I guess
yeah,
it
that's
didn't really
a good
matter.
point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Saint Etienne green, and Sampdoria like blue and bits of white and red and black like stripes. So not really.
I feel like we spoke to Giles a little bit about that in the podcast that you mentioned. I feel like he spoke about that as well, and I think the amount that they spent on it was like so much that they had to cut back on all of the marketing, that they just didn't have enough to market, and that's why you got so few adverts in any other format. And then it didn't really work that well because, you know, I think the idea was footballers also like to play games, so let's get the football crowd, and it's like didn't quite work.
Yeah. I think I find it interesting that they had like, we all play games, why don't we play together? That was like, apart from the up to 6 billion players part that was scratched. But this is an interesting idea. I find the marketing strategy for the Dreamcast in Europe to be quite fascinating, especially since they never showed, or at the time they launched, they never showed like the games themselves. Which is interesting because they were targeting a different demographic and focusing on the aspect of playing together. But I don't know how impactful that was. I don't know if it hindered the success of the console, if it helped. I have no idea. I have no idea. I actually found a quote that I used on another episode of the show when we had Brian Shea, former director of Game Informer, on the show. We talked about like Sega games on Nintendo consoles, and I found a quote by the vice president of strategic planning and corporate affairs at Sega of America, Charles Belfield, in November 2001, and he said something interesting. He said, the Dreamcast was essentially hugged to death by consumers and gamers everywhere. In hindsight, everybody adored the product. It's still considered one of the best game platforms ever created for the price and the content that we had on it in the first 2 years. And this is the interesting part of the quote. It was those who didn't buy the Dreamcast that eventually killed the product. That's some interesting logic.
That's true of everything that failed then.
Right? So the people who didn't buy the Dreamcast were the ones who killed the console, not the ones who bought it. I never knew that. That's a very interesting quote by Charles Belfield. If you're listening to this, Charles, come on the show. Let's talk. Explain it. Let's explain this better.
I think it's really interesting, though, that I guess obviously it didn't do as well as we needed it to. But I think, Andrew, you said on like an old Dream Pod that it did better than the Saturn in Europe and America. Whereas, like, I think if you look at the sale, so it sold us about the same as the Saturn, but it did better in the West. So they kind of got us a little bit. They kind of won us back over, but not enough, unfortunately.
And it was kind of dead at arrival, right? So they were. It was not the Dreamcast. The problem wasn't the Dreamcast.
The problem was Sega. That was the problem.
For sure. So that back to those like Portuguese articles that I found about the Dreamcast. So one that is much more recent said something like I think during the 20th anniversary celebrations or something, a Portuguese article said, even though it was seen as a failure, the Dreamcast was worth it. And I think this quote like perfectly translates my feelings towards the console as well. Probably you guys as well. So I wanted to mention the legacy of this little box and the blue swirl. By talking about what it meant to us and what it still means to us. Maybe I'm going to go with Lewis first as the head honcho of the Dreamcast Junkyard. What does the Dreamcast still mean to you? And is it any different from what it meant to you when you first got it and when you first experienced games on it? We're going deep, people. Very deep.
Yeah, like I feel like with the Dreamcast is important for me because I don't think it is just the case that I'm like blinded by nostalgia. I think that actually the more, obviously I have all the games that I loved back when I first discovered it, but discovering all the things I didn't know about it, it's just such a fascinating piece of gaming history. I remember when I first joined the Junkyard chatting to Mike Phelan, and he's written that A to Z guide, and there's just so many cool games, and it's like, how did this console fail with this many cool games, and and I obviously being with the Junkyard, like it just continues to impress me, with like brand new games coming out, the homebrew that's going on, like the fact that people are doing a really impressive job of getting Grand Theft Auto 3 running on it, for example. And, people often talk about piracy being one of the things that killed the Dreamcast, but actually it's one of those sort of happy accidents because the fact that it's so easy to, run like, illegal software on has meant that the indie scene and the homebrew scene are still flourishing, whereas no one talks about PS2 indie games. It's like, well, so technically the Dreamcast outlived the PS2 in some way.
and you know what, the best selling peripheral for the Dreamcast was the holder, right? The black holder. The PS2 was the best selling peripheral. That's a bad joke. Okay. Yeah. Ash, what does the Dreamcast mean to you?
Well, it's
this is like therapy now.
Yeah, it's like therapy because I didn't have Dreamcast, so I don't have that kind of feeling of losing something I loved back in the day. But at the same time, I feel like Dreamcast is the last mm, last thing of classic gaming. I feel like it's the classic game console. The console who came before, we can consider it retro now, but the feeling of the games are different of what Dreamcast game before were. That arcadish feeling that was lost, and Dreamcast was the last time we had that as a mainstream in gaming. So I miss it a lot. I miss that era of gaming, that way of making games, and Dreamcast is like the poster child for that. So yeah, I really miss that.
Agreed. Andrew.
Gosh, I mean, so I credit Dreamcast with kind of properly making me love games. Like, I played games up until that point, and yes, I loved things like Resident Evil, but it wasn't until I got and played the Dreamcast that I had a proper appreciation for like the full spectrum of gaming, not just a survival horror game that I had an obsession with. It was all these different games that I'd never got to play before. It was all the arcade stuff. It was Shenmue. It was like Phantasy Star Online. So many different kinds of games. And that was the reason that we got a lot of that, is because Sega was trying to throw everything at the wall to make it stick, to make it a success, because they knew what kind of trouble they were in. And without it having been in that trouble, we wouldn't have the Dreamcast that we had. We wouldn't have the games that we have. So it means a lot to me for the fact that it kind of brought me into gaming, as it were. And then obviously, however many years later, about 5 or 6 years ago, it kind of brought me into the career that I'm in now, which is to be able to talk about games and to publish things about games. And I got into that because I wrote a book about the Dreamcast, which is my favorite console of all time. So it means a lot to me, because it's not only my gaming history, but also my life now, because I've gotten into a career that I really wanted because of the Dreamcast, really. And I think that, the legacy that it leaves is that, it's a legacy of what a game company can do when it's let loose, when it's freed from the shackles of, having to make a sequel to a popular game that they need to make this money to. I mean, they released Sega Gaga, for crying out loud, a game that made, and no sane game company would have done that at the time. And it's the fact that they weren't sane, that they were just trying anything that was so great. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to remember for the Dreamcast. For I know some people get stuck on it failing and blaming parties for that, like PlayStation 2 or Sony. And I know some people still feel like raw about that to this day, that, oh my God, Sony killed the Dreamcast. And I'm like, well, no, Sega killed the cast. Realistically, that it was never going to survive. They were going bankrupt. And the only reason they didn't is because somebody forgave debt to them. And I think you just have to be thankful that we had the Dreamcast, or like you said, the fact that we even got to have that is fantastic. So that's a legacy it leaves, along with the fact that it is an incredible indie machine now. It's just, we got some incredible games that you would never have seen otherwise, if it wasn't for this kind of melting pot of things that happened at the right time.
For sure. And Sony didn't kill the Dreamcast. The people who didn't buy the Dreamcast killed it. Remember that. Yeah. Always remember that.
Waiting for playing and to buy PS2, get the Dreamcast.
That's true. I remember. I mentioned this on the show several times, but I had a classmate at the time that when I first met him, we started talking about like games and stuff, and I said, "Oh, I'm really excited about the Sega Dreamcast. It's coming soon," and it was like, "The Sega Dreamcast? That sucks. I'm just gonna wait for the PS2. That's gonna like blow it out of the water." And I've never spoken to him again. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So he used to make fun of me for being a Sega fan and for getting the Dreamcast. And we actually like made a bet that the PS2 would fail. Of course, I lost that bet, sadly. But it's kind of like the mindset of the general public, the general gaming public at the time, right? There wasn't much that could have been done by Sega to change things, but it was, like that article said, it was worth it. I think the Dreamcast was worth it, and we should be thankful for having this little box that still plays a lot of great games, even like you guys said already, great indie games, like great ports of otherwise impossible games to run on the Dreamcast or to have been released on the Dreamcast. It really has. I think, Ash, you put it in a wonderful way when you said it's like the last bastion of like classic gaming. to me, it's the end of like Blue Sky's Sega. I know that Sega still released some of the Dreamcast's games on other consoles and still released some things like, for example, Billy Hatcher comes to mind on the GameCube and stuff. But Dreamcast was like the last piece of Sega hardware and like the last testament of Blue Sky's Sega for me. But it's still going on. We actually had some interesting like series starting on the Dreamcast. So, for example, Shenmue started on the Dreamcast. It's still going. Hopefully, at least we had another game after that on more modern consoles. Jet Set Radio was a series that started on the Dreamcast. Sonic is still going, and the Sonic Adventure games on the Dreamcast and GameCube were successful. Can you think of any others that we had? Virtua Fighter, although that's kind of stuck in limbo.
Yeah. Sorry.
We are
sorry.
going to have a new Crazy Taxi soon. So
Crazy Taxi.
Yeah, Soul
Yes.
Calibur. That's not
That's
Sega,
true.
but it's
Soul
a
Calibur.
series, isn't it? Yeah.
I
The NBA 2K
I think
games
many
are still
people
going.
associate Soul
That was
Calibur with
Sega.
Dreamcast still, though. Yeah. And NBA 2K.
That's true.
Yes, sorry, Andrew. I interrupted you there. Yeah. Okay.
How dare you?
If you could, so you already know that Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, and that's it, I think, in terms of Dreamcast. But those two series are getting new games soon. Soon-ish. We don't know much about them at this moment. If you could pick, and this is your challenge, Andrew. You said you were nervous about the challenge. This is your challenge. If you could pick one of the Dreamcast games that you love to have like a reboot or a remake or a sequel in 2024, what would it be?
Skies of Arcadia.
That was quick.
Easy. Yeah. Skies of Arcadia. That game has been overlooked for far too long. And it needs a remaster / remake and then a sequel, because that is an incredible game. Has a brilliant story. They created an amazing world. It's really sad because the director of that game passed away, I think, a year or two ago, Reiko Kodama. So the likelihood of that happening is probably much less now. But yeah, it's such an incredible game that just doesn't get the love that it deserves. It does from Dreamcast fans, but people outside that don't really see it. Maybe some of the GameCube fans as well, because it released there
I
too.
think that's a good point, that what you just mentioned. I think the fan base for Skies of Arcadia is larger than Sega realizes at points. I think there would be like a massive chunk of Nintendo fans that would love to have a new or a remake or a re-release of Skies of Arcadia, because I've seen Nintendo fans mention that game. Not like it's like there's a massive fan base, but it's a good chunk of people.
Yeah.
Loved
And it was they got the better version as well, because they had the random battles reduced. So you know, damn them! I sat through all of those random battles. Damn it, every single one.
Yeah. Okay. Lewis, if you could pick one to come back.
Yeah, I mean, if it hadn't have had a reboot announced, like I think it was this year, I would have said Jet Set Radio. Although I would also say that Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is kind of the Jet Set Radio game I wanted. I'm a little bit cynical about what Sega are going to produce, because I don't really like the look of like the way they've made Beat and everything. But you know, I'd like to be happily proven wrong. But I know it's not a Sega property, but I just
Doesn't
a
have
Power
to be.
Stone, yeah,
Okay.
a Power Stone 3 for me. You know, online. You know, the only thing with that is I'd worry that they'd make it too much like the first game. Whereas I think if you to appease nerds like me, you'd have to have a little bit of 2 in there. somehow. But with the thing with like you see something like Smash Brothers with all these big tournaments and all these people who like are obsessed with that game, and it's like Capcom have just I said it before, Capcom have just let such a good franchise just peter out and not really go anywhere. Obviously, we're going to get it online again, so hopefully that can form some form of revival. People can discover it maybe, which would be really good. So let's see.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah. Ash?
Well, maybe a bit something everybody is going to say, but I want Shenmue 4. I really love 1, 2, and 3. Even if people did not like it a lot, I loved it. I need to know how the story ends. And please, please, Yu Suzuki, if you're hearing me, please finish the story at 4.
Yes, agree.
Trying to see if you're not going to do more than 4. If lucky. So please finish the story. That's what we need.
A powerful request here. I agree. Yeah, if I'm being realistic, yeah, that's probably the way to go, right? Finish at 4. Yeah, just got like reduce the gameplay bits and like add more cutscenes to tell the story and like try to squeeze it in the fourth game. Maybe that's the way to go. So I'm obviously up for a Shenmue 4. Guys, that's my favorite game of all time, Shenmue 1 and 2 especially. I was gonna steer away from that, steer clear from Shenmue, because people are always saying that I talk too much about Shenmue. I was gonna mention not enough. That's true. That's the actual truth there. But I was gonna mention another series that started on the Dreamcast and that I was forgetting. It was amazing. Virtua Tennis.
Yeah.
I think, and we got a few sequels. We went up to 4, I believe, and some like on the PSP and PS Vita, and like there's a mobile version as well, which is still available to play, and it's still a great little game. But I would love like a Virtua Tennis 5 or something, or like Virtua Tennis, but call it the way you did in the US, like Tennis 2K15 or something, or Virtua Tennis 2K15 if you'd like to. But I would love to get a new Virtua Tennis, and of course 90 minutes. A new 90 minutes is a must. Like 90 minutes VAR version or VAR edition or something like that. I don't know. Make it topical, or I don't know, maybe something like that. 90 plus 5 minutes. I have no clue. But Shenmue and Virtua Tennis. I also forgot about Space Channel 5, also a series that started on the Dreamcast. There was a VR game released outside of the Dreamcast. And I think I remembered, Phantasy Star Online also started on Dreamcast, and now we have 2, which I believe is a fairly successful MMO for people who are still into that sort of thing. So a lot of things that started on the Dreamcast and are still going. Okay, so I wanted to close this out with a quick fire round. It's just one question. Your favorite Dreamcast game? We've probably mentioned this somewhat, right? But you can only choose one. And I'll go first. Shenmue. So from my left to my right, Lewis.
Shenmue 2. Power Stone 2. That's my favorite. Final answer.
Okay. And your answer is incorrect. Okay. Andrew.
There's so many. I honestly have about 5 or 6 that are on at number 1 altogether. But if you have to push me, it's probably Shenmue, to be perfectly honest. So
okay.
yeah.
Okay, good man. Ash. And why is it Shenmue?
No, Shenmue, I love it, but no, my favorite game, not only in Dreamcast, but it's like a stepping stone, like the base of my personality and who I am is Sonic Adventure 2. So that is my favorite game.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's a good answer. Good answer as well. Okay, very good. So this is it. We're celebrating 25 years of the Dreamcast in Europe. I shouldn't say Europe. I should say like PAL regions, right? There would be more.
Yeah.
But
There's
then
Australia
again,
in that as well.
yeah. So happy 25th anniversary to the Dreamcast, to the box of dreams that we're still so in love with after all these years. Also, we're old guys. Okay, never forget that. Never forget that. It's really, really, really sad. And looking back, I've had my Dreamcast for most of my life, which is kind of amazing now, looking back. So thank you very much, Lewis, Andrew, and Ash for joining me for this special episode. Before we go, I wanted people to know where they can find you online, and please feel free to share any projects you're working on, Sega or otherwise. And so I'm going to give you some more screen time. Lewis, let's start with you.
Hello, I am Lewis from the Dreamcast Junkyard. You can check out the Dreamcast Junkyard at www.thedreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. I'm on Twitter at LewisJFC. And also, I've mentioned this before, but I want to plug it. Go check out the Nakaruru Dreamcast English fan translation that I was the lead editor for. And previous Sega Lounge guest Derek Pascarella was heavily involved with. In fact, he was the brains behind the whole operation, to be honest. But yeah, go check that out and discover a new Dreamcast game today.
I like that last one. Yeah, discover a new Dreamcast game today. Nice.
Yeah, it's not really a game; it's just a big reading exercise. But you should check it out.
Yeah, a labor of love. So definitely recommended. Thank you, Lewis. Andrew Dickinson.
It's me. You can find me online at Oddman84 on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. I'm obviously on the Dreamcast Junkyard too. And I work at Debug Magazine, which is an indie game magazine. We did a whole article on indie Dreamcast games at one point because I just do that in everything that I'm in. You can find that at I think it's at Debug Magazine, or you can go to teamdebug.com. You can buy my Dreamcast books if you'd like to. Go to bit.ly/DCY Digital, because I only have digital copies left. I also just started a new company called Gamebound, which is publishing magazines, and our first one's called Generations. We just successfully crowdfunded that. It will be available to buy, and it does have an article on Virtua Tennis, Casey. So you'll be pleased to know that in that magazine. But yeah, before I leave as well, I wanted to share one small anecdote. You mentioned you got a free keyboard with the online thing for Portugal.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't get that here. We got like Choo Choo Rocket for nearly free. It was like £5. But I did. We went on a trip to France when I was 16, just after I got the Dreamcast, and I bought a keyboard from France, and I got on with it and set it up to play Phantasy Star Online. And only then did I realise that all countries in Europe have different keyboard layouts, and I had no idea how to type on it. And that went out ever again. Waste of money.
Was it expensive? I don't remember how much it was here.
I think it was like, because it would have been, would it have been, what, Euros came in 2000, right? I think the euro.
2000, yeah, right?
And that was the year that
Ash
I got
helped
it.
me out here. Was it 2000? I think so. I think we're transitioning, right? 2000 to 2002. I think we were transitioning to Euro.
So it was around then. So it would have been, I think it was like 15. It was 15 to 18 euros or something. I think it was. So it wasn't horribly expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
And it's nice to fight zombies.
Yeah, if you've got the right letters in the right place. Sure.
At least you can like use it as like a throwing weapon or something. I don't know.
Beat somebody with it.
Yeah, beat some zombies. Okay. Great. So check out Andrew's works, and remember, Dreamcast here. This is the first one. Oh, and you have the. Can you show us the third one, the cover for the third one again? Okay.
Yeah. I'll show it again. We're not actually, we don't have a solid date for doing this. I think me and Lewis have been chatting about this for probably 2 years at this point. So, but we will, I do want to do it because it'll be the last book in the series, and I do want to make sure that I close it out. So at some point I can't even say the near future, but at some point in the future, there will be a third book in that series. But the first two are pretty good on their own. I think I would. I'm saying that myself, of course, but I think they're pretty
I agree.
books, so.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, we will have Dreamcast Year 3 whenever we get Shenmue 4. Okay. Ash, where can people find you?
Well, people can find me at Twitter or X. That's my personal account, and I also have a YouTube channel where we talk about everything retro games and the series we especially like Sonic, Resident Evil, Mortal Kombat, and a bit of everything. Also, we have Sonic Paradise, which is the Spanish language biggest Spanish fan site. We also have that at Twitter, Instagram, X, well, X is Twitter, Facebook, Mastodon, Blue Sky,
Threads?
We're everywhere.
Everywhere. That's it. Exactly.
Yeah, and YouTube, too, and TikTok. There's too many.
Everywhere. Just look for Sonic Paradise, right?
Yeah, but our YouTube channel is from me and my partner. Aside from Sonic Paradise, who also have a YouTube channel, where we talk about games and stuff in Spanish, of course.
Of course. And we'll link all of those in the show notes as well. And also, a big shout out to your partner as well, Ash, for contributing in the background, right? Yeah. Thank you for contributing in some way to this episode. Of course, we're the SEGA Lounge. Thank you for listening / watching. Remember, all episodes now have video versions on YouTube, or current episodes. I'm going to be, as time goes on, as I have more free time, I'll upload some video versions of past episodes, because I've been recording video for a while, but I've only been uploading video versions more recently. But if you're into that sort of thing, if you want to see more of this old mug, just check out our YouTube channel. If you don't want to be bothered by the ugly visuals, you can listen to us always wherever you get your podcasts. And this was a very special episode, but we have more. We actually have more specials coming until the end of the season. Other topics that we'll cover, and some interesting interviews. So do join us for that, guys. Again, thank you very much for joining me. Wouldn't it have been fun without you? I can tell you that. Just me sharing my memories of Dreamcast would be boring. So thank you very much for joining me. And thank you everyone for watching. See you guys next week. Bye-bye. Bye. The SEGA Lounge, hosted by me, KC, and part of Radio Sega's network of live shows and podcasts. Theme song and incidental music by OSC. Got any suggestions? Drop me an email to podcast@thesegalounge.com. Find us at The Sega Lounge on X, Twitter, and Instagram, at thesegalounge.com on Blue Sky, and be sure to check out our Twitch and YouTube channel for live video content. You can find previous episodes of the show by going to thesegalounge.com, on the Terra Player app, and wherever you listen to podcasts. a Mixed on Productions podcast.